Hi, folks. My name's David Nalley. I lead developer experience at AWS. I'm so excited that I get to hang out with all of you today, and also my friend Rachel Stevens, who's an industry analyst at Redmonk. Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself and tell people what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm Rachel Stevens. I am the research director at Redmonk. And at Redmonk, we focus on developer and practitioner led technology adoption trends. So basically, we want to understand what the people who have their hands on the keyboard are doing and how that influences what's being used in the technology field.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I said thanks to everyone who's watching us. I want to call out a special thank you to your mother who's watching us as well.
Hi, Mom.
Uh, Rachel,
Can't believe you did that. I explicitly said not to do that. But hi, Mom.
Rachel, you get to see a lot of things happening in the software development industry,
I do indeed.
and you get to see a lot of the future trends coming. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in general in this field?
Yeah, so I would say if you do what I do, if you're an industry analyst in the year 2025, by law, you are required to talk about AI when you're talking about industry trends. That is the rule. But I want to take it a little bit broader when I talk about it, and I want to talk about trends that we're seeing broadly and how AI is impacting them. So one of the trends that we see is kind of a desire for platforms. There's a lot of complexity in the landscape right now, and part of it is driven by AI complexity. We're also just seeing just complexity in general as tools have fragmented. So we see kind of people driving to K8s and kind of CNCF-based platforms on their own. We see people trying to go to like new Heroku-style platforms. We're seeing WASM, kind of a whole bunch of different flavors of platforms around the scene. And then we also see people who are trying to experiment with AI as its own version of an abstraction layer. So that's one place where we see AI experimenting in the platform field. Because of AI, data is always a really important part of it. We, to be frank, have always talked about the importance of data ever since I've been in this field. You can go all the way back to the big data Hadoop days, and people are talking about data-driven decision making, and it's always something that we're talking about. The reason it's different now is because AI has changed the queryability of the data for a lot of people, and it's really democratized people's ability to access data and broadened out the ability to do it. And also just the amount of money that's been invested has really changed the ROI for a lot of people. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just the fact that the frothiness of the market right now is huge. The amount of tools and investment in tools right now is gigantic. So the amount of
You mean dev tools, right?
dev tools for sure. And so I think that's what we're seeing in the market right now. And so yeah, let's talk
Let's
dev
talk
tools.
about dev tools.
Yeah.
Like you just said the word frothy.
Frothy.
What does that mean as an I mean that I'm sure that's a technical term as an analyst, but
No, I don't think so.
tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the dev tool market then.
I just think it's really moving quickly. So the tools that were really cutting edge 12 months ago are the ones that are being replaced and rolling over now. So the investment and the way that the market is moving in the model space and the tool space is just moving very quickly. And so there's no resting on laurels right now for vendors or for people who are making the investment in the tools. You have to be prepared for things to be moving quickly.
Are you seeing multiple tool adoption in developers machines?
I think it really depends on where developers are at. I think developers are all, and the people they work for are all trying to figure out what this actually looks like because people don't know where to place their investment bets right now. So people have a lot of money that they're trying to figure out how to allocate, a lot of time and investment that they're trying to figure out what's actually going to give me the most bang for my buck and the best developer experience. And so, yes, some people are kicking the tires on multiple things, and some people are just trying to invest in one, and that's where we're going to go right now. And so, and sometimes it's the first horse leader kind of thing, and some people were doing multi-horse races.
So I'm a little bit older. I'm not quite Jurassic Park older, but I'm trying to earn the graybeard designation, as you can see. And so and I think a lot of people like me have a little bit of a curmudgeonly outlook on AI and how it's going to impact things. If you were a developer sitting in my shoes, what would you tell me that would perhaps convince me that generative AI actually has a place in the future of software development?
Yeah. So I think you're not alone, first of all. I think there's very much people who are skeptical. I think there's a lot of people who are in that true believer camp who have experimented with AI and have seen the way that it has changed their workflows, who have experienced the way that it has accelerated their work, dramatically changed their work, or has enabled them to do something that they weren't able to do before, which is impactful. And I think at the other time, we have seen people who are skeptical either of the ethical concerns, of the governance, of the way that it's all coming, or they have concerns maybe about job loss and replacement. There's a lot of concerns that come from a lot of different angles. So I think a lot of people are maybe in that, it's not so much whether you could use AI, it's whether you should use AI. So you have to kind of have that balance of how are you thinking about it? Should you be using it? Is it the right use case for it? And are the right people using it?
Is it going to cost me my job?
It's a good question. I think in the short term, there's definitely going to be impacts in how people are doing things. And I think I'm really slightly grumpy with you right now, not only for the mom call out, but also you're going to make me be the person who has to say Agentic AI on stage.
We'll talk about Agentic AI in a minute. But you know, what I keep hearing you describe, though, is something that I feel like we've been through before. Like when we moved from assembly to modern languages, when we started using IDEs instead of text editors, that didn't, I mean, there was a lot of it's destroying software development as an art type of wailing and gnashing of teeth, but software development continued to be a thing. So like, is it that type of incremental step change that you see coming in the industry?
This is a good question. So I'm a believer that I'm going to throw out the Jevans Paradox thing, and you can talk. I think in the short term there's going to be changes, and I think one of the things that we've seen a lot are people who have tried to make big job cuts in and around AI have realized that the market is not there yet in their ability to have AI fully replace and augment and replace humans. It still is a place in the market where it needs to augment humans. And so for at least where the market is now, there's, I don't think, full ability for AI to replace humans. That said, I do think that there is a lot of desire for just kind of that hunt for what is it that we can do to be more automated. And I think sometimes in capitalistic societies, when we look for automation, sometimes that means job loss. And so it can be scary. But I do think in the long term, when you look at the Jevans Paradox world, which means as things get easier to consume, more things are consumed, I do think that I think there are reasons to be hopeful that it actually means bigger and better and more software is produced. So
I like the Jevans Paradox reference. So if you're not aware of what Jevans Paradox is, in 1865, an economist with the last name of Jevans discovered through research that essentially when you made things more efficient, it didn't drop demand. It actually increased demand. And at the time, he was talking about coal-fired plants, and even as the coal-fired plants became more efficient, it didn't decrease the demand for coal. As a matter of fact, it increased it. I like that because I think we had a similar phase when people started talking about cloud computing. When cloud computing came around, they said, making workloads more efficient, making it easier to spin things up is going to decimate a lot of the computing industry. And I think we've seen that definitely has not had that outcome.
Yeah.
You invoked the word agentic.
I did.
A minute ago.
Sorry.
That feels a little buzzwordy, if I'm honest.
It is.
I mean, I know we heard Jeff talking about agentic workflows a little earlier, but like as an analyst, getting away from some of the hype, what does agentic mean to you?
So I think when I think agentic, I just think about automated workflows. And I think anyone out there who's listening to that realizes that The problem with the buzzwordy feeling of agentic then is automated how and which workflows, because we're all then going to be talking about slightly different things in slightly different ways. But when I'm thinking about traditional prompt engineering with an LLM, I'm thinking about I have prompted an LLM, my query then goes into the LLM and I get an output. And then if I want to change that output, I need to reprompt. In an agentic workflow, I can prompt, and my LLM then has a broader context window and different steps. So the LLM then can kind of cycle through the way that it is thinking about things and kind of think about like looping in a function kind of thing. So it can take my feedback, it can cycle through what it is that it is thinking about. It can take inputs and recycle them back through the LLM and go through like a multi-step process and then output things. So it's not that all of the inputs that are going into the LLM are coming directly from the user prompt, but that the LLM can prompt itself. And so I think that's a way that you can think about agentic AI in the way. So like when you're talking about where people start to get worried about job loss, it's like that's where people can get a little bit concerned because like, oh no, the LLM is prompting itself kind of thing. I still think a lot of what I've seen in the market thus far is very much augmentative and not replacement.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, again, I'm approaching fossil stage, and so to make sure I understand what you're saying that instead of just telling it to do something and it does that, it also looks at all of the other things that need to be done. Like if I update a function, maybe it goes and works on the documentation.
Yes.
Okay, that's fascinating. I think that's. I also heard you say something that we're looking at. We've historically interacted with these tools, these coding assistants, in a chat function, and I heard you make that comment, and almost like you assumed that that's not going to be the future.
I think the reason that we started with chat functions and it felt so natural is because IDEs for a long time have had code completion. And so it was a really natural way for developers to kind of iterate. So it's code completion, and then we go into kind of a more natural language thing. And it was just kind of a more natural state of step function changes. And as we think about where we're going from here, I think we're going to see it evolve beyond just AI as a code editor and a code completion assistant into more of the SDLC. I think we'll see that it is starting to take broader modalities and more formats.
Yeah, that's interesting because that sounds like a different way of developing than perhaps what at least people like me are used to.
I think that comes back to our frothy word. Things are changing.
Things are changing. Have you seen this rate of innovation or frothiness or pace of change happen before?
Not in my time in the industry. I think it definitely has felt like a rate of change that has been new for me. Have you?
Cloud computing seemed like it took over the world 20-ish years ago. And so that seemed to be a sea change, and everyone was talking about cloud computing. Maybe that's the closest thing I've seen to this. But I also think that there are a lot of things staying the same. And what I heard from you today is that the way that software is going to be developed is changing. We may not even know what that looks like yet.
Yep.
I heard you say that, and I heard you invoke Jevans Paradox. And if you're not familiar with Jevans Paradox, it is worth a read on Wikipedia. But I heard you invoke Jevans Paradox to describe the situation. So what I'm interpreting from that is that you think that I still have a job in 6 months.
Yes.
And then I also heard you talk a lot about platforms and data.
Yes.
And that those are getting new and different kinds of attention than we've had before.
Yes.
Rachel, really thank you for coming out here. I know this was a flight for you to come spend time with us. I know everyone here appreciates that. I appreciate you giving us a glimpse into the crystal ball that Redmonk has on the future of software development. And I really appreciate all of you learning along with us. Thank you so much.